Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the Monster Hunter series. This is another off-script video where I'll be going over the new inclusion of Fatalis in Monster Hunter World. We're finally here, we're at the final title update, and it's really amazing to see that a lot of us who had the thought of Fatalis potentially being the final monster turn out to be true. I ran a poll online asking if people would like to see a small commentary or analysis video before part 3 of Frontier, which comes out on Saturday. So I decided to go ahead and put this together. It's going to be short and sweet and off script and hopefully give you a better idea on my opinions on Fatalis, what I thought they did right, what I thought they might have done a little bit wrong. But I will tell you right away that it's a pretty amazing fight. I'm pretty happy with it and I was surprised to have so much fun with it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the build-up. Monster Hunter World has always had a fairly extensive storyline. It hasn't been one that I have been particularly interested in too much in comparison to, say, Monster Hunter 4. I much preferred Monster Hunter 4's story, but the scale of Monster Hunter World's story has always been fairly high, and the way that they make monsters look dangerous has always been very interesting. So the build-up to Fatalis that we start to see before we actually get to fight it was really interesting. The first thing they make you do is fight Alatreon again, which is the biggest middle finger to all of the players that had such a tough time with it and complained about it online. Now it is a bit easier and you don't have to worry about it too much, but it is just really funny that they do make you fight it after having to already fought Alatreon in order to unlock Fatalis in the first place. So I really enjoyed this part of the storyline specifically, mostly the inclusion of the general and seeing people from the old world come over to the new world. If you didn't already know, the Guardian armor and the Defender equipment is generally based off of the Dundorma Guard equipment. And it was really cool to see a bunch of Dundorma Guards show up with the General. And there was a couple callbacks to the old world that we got to see, such as the Ace Cadet or the A-lister from the old world being recognized by the General, actually calling him by name, calling him Aiden. That was really interesting. And Aiden even changes his armor, which we haven't seen for a while, changing it to the Kushala setup, which was a direct callback to previous Monster Hunter entries that he appeared in. So now we have the old world working with the new world, we have the commission working with the Dundorma Guard and the general, and this meeting of old world and new kind of culminates in the nostalgia-fueled area of Castle Shrade, somewhere that we've only seen in previous games, and is generally a place where we have non-canon fights, such as Fatalis. We've never actually, within the storyline or quest line of one of the Monster Hunter games, canonically fought a Fatalis. It's always been this optional fight you can do, but lore-wise, it's basically just a legend and no one's actually within modern times fought one. So this is the first time we actually get to do that, and that's very exciting. And you could tell that they wanted to really like set the scale and danger level of this monster because it's a classic. And when they get to Shrade, it was amazing. It was this huge culture shock that I was super happy to experience. It was great to see it. They show off where all the equipment is going to be, but then Fatalis shows up early before the commission can actually show up to back them up. And who's going to defeat Fatalis? Well, it's going to be the A-lister or the Ace Cadet or Aiden and your character. And I found it so interesting because the general understands how difficult Fatalis is going to be, how strong he is. He's a legend. And you have these two guys that are about to go up against it by themselves, and he's basically like, no, you stupid fools, this thing will murder you. But the commission leader knows that your hunter and the Ace Cadet, I guess, are basically superhuman in comparison to most hunters, and that they can get this done. And I thought that was really interesting to see because of some of the crazy stuff that you actually fight within world specifically. It's pretty obvious that your hunters are a different breed, and I thought it was cool that that was acknowledged and that the old world got to see the new world be so powerful. So onto the fight itself, it is extremely difficult. I'm pretty sure it hits harder than Alatreon. It will just wipe your HP away if you're not careful. It's disgusting. It comes in 3 phases where Aiden will help you in the first phase with a heavy bowgun. It was very interesting to have an NPC co-op experience. They set it up so that if you make Fatalis flinch by hitting its midsection, Aiden will actually use a binder to keep it in place, and then you can get more damage done to it, something that you could do in a co-op experience. And it's quite the culture shock. People probably aren't going to be used to the monster hitting this hard on fully upgraded meta sets. It is going to be very difficult for you, and a lot of these moves are going to be very punishing. There's a couple that can kill you in one go, even if you get attacked by them at full health. So you really do have to be keeping an eye on Fatalis, on your item management, and it really felt like an old school Monster Hunter experience. Fatalis is so scary and aggressive. I was screaming during some of the parts of the fight. I was scaring my partner. He'll rush you from across the map. He will destroy surrounding equipment in his path. His attacks are insanely powerful. You have very limited areas in which you can hide behind in order to dodge some of those attacks. It was very stressful, but a very rewarding experience. As you fight him, there will be a phase transition you have to watch out for, and you don't really have to watch out for it in the first time that you fight it, because a cutscene will trigger in which the ace cadet gets blasted with Fatalis's flame breath. And I won't spoil anything for you, but essentially if you cart during that fight after the first phase, then when you go back into the fight, you still start at the first phase, but you don't have the ace cadet with you. So if you're having trouble with it solo, you're definitely going to need to throw an SOS flare or bring some friends along with you into co-op. Losing Aiden was already a bonkers feeling for me in that fight because I was already stressed out with how powerful this monster was, and dealing with it just by myself seemed almost impossible. In the first phase, Fatalis will mostly just stay on all fours and then go up in a bipedal state, but in the second phase of the fight, it will now fly. The Dragonator and the mobile bowgun machine gun thing are unlocked, which was a really cool inclusion. It is actually a very effective tool to use in the fight because it is highly mobile, it's very fast, and it's basically a machine gun. So if you're in a co-op experience, I would suggest trying it out. But if you're solo, I wouldn't suggest using any of the weaponry except the Dragonator or the barricade. And that's because Fatalis is so strong and so aggressive. If you bother with any of these instead of just evading, you will probably get hit and you will lose almost all of your life bar. But on the weaponry, I wouldn't really suggest using a lot of it at all. Like, the cannons are pretty useless. If you're using a meta set, you're not going to have too much trouble dealing damage, and you're probably losing a lot of DPS if you're up on the cannons putting in cannonballs while the rest of your team is out tenderizing and dealing damage to the monster itself. So yeah, Fatalis 2 can fly, you can use the Dragonator, and then there will be one more phase transition where it gets into this new final form that I'm not sure if we've seen before. We might have in previous Monster Hunter games. I know we've seen a glowing chest before on the monster, I think in Monster Hunter 4, and it will have access to a couple new moves, such as its flame attacks becoming blue. I think it's a bit faster, and as you're fighting it, it will actually use that giant flame attack that it uses during phase shifts multiple times. But now you'll actually have the ability to run up to Fatalis in order to dodge the attack. I believe that it's guaranteed to happen after a certain amount of damage is done to the monster, so you'll see it 2 or 3 times before actually slaying it. And when it happened to me, it happened in the exact same place every time, so I'm pretty sure you can predict it and be ready just in case you don't want to take any extra damage. But yeah, that's the fight, and I thought it was fantastic. I was actually really surprised to see a fight like this in Monster Hunter World. Some final thoughts I have on it was that I felt like this was the type of fight we've been missing for a while. It still had some mechanics that I am like iffy on when it comes to World in comparison to the old school games, such as attacks that are purposefully made to cover such a wide area that you're kind of expected to dodge them by standing behind barricades or rubble. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't really like that. I'm more about evading and predicting their attacks, but it's there and it's not too gratuitous. And it's a very old school aesthetic. Being back at Shrade was amazing. It really felt like I was playing like an old school Monster Hunter game, but in a new school environment. But it still relies way too heavily on the clutch claw, and that's to be expected, but I didn't like that. The monster is huge and it's very hard to reach its head as a blade master, so you're going to be tenderizing its feet and its midsection for the majority of the fight, and that was less fun to me, but didn't ruin the experience. I don't think the fight needed to be that difficult. It was very difficult, and I'm expecting to see a lot of players complain about this. It dealt a lot of damage. Monster Hunter isn't necessarily about the difficulty, but about the cooperative experience. That being said, you can really learn this monster's patterns. A lot of them are telegraphed or have a build-up effect to them before they actually go off. So you can learn how to do the fight. It is not impossible. I have done it. Multiple other people have done it. You can do it too, I promise. And there's no elemental DPS check, so you don't have to worry about that. You can bring whatever set you want as long as it is effective. That being said, I really feel like this fight promoted a cooperative experience, which is something that we like to see in Monster Hunter instead of just solo fights. The game is about cooperative experiences, and this fight almost requires it, in my opinion. It's very difficult to do solo, and you're gonna have a hard time. There are multiple tools which I found not very effective, but if you are having a hard time with Fatalis, you can allow your teammates to deal with that while you support them from afar. but Fatalis will target you very often if you are using any of the cannons, so watch out for that. And finally, there were some scenes at the end that were just very interesting lore-wise. It was very nice to see Aiden be acknowledged by his master. It was great to see everybody having finally dealt with Fatalis, which has basically just been a legend at this point. And it was cool to see your hunter acknowledged by not only the commission leader, but the old world as well. It would have been really cool to eventually see Dundorma, but I don't think that'll happen in World. But it might happen in Monster Hunter Rise, so who knows? Anyway, those are my thoughts on the fight. I really enjoyed it. I really had a lot of fun with it. If you ever need some tips and tricks on the fight, I'm sure there's a lot of videos on YouTube already to check out on that, so be sure to do that. These have just been my thoughts on it, and I want you to know that I was really happy with it. I'm really happy with the direction they took for Fatalis. I think there's still some issues, but all in all, it was better than a lot of the inclusions they have put into the game thus far in Iceborne. And hopefully we get to see some more improvements in Monster Hunter Rise. I have been super rad, and thank you so much for watching the video. I will have the Frontier Part 3 video out on Saturday at noon, my time, EST, and you can check it out then. So yeah, thank you.